name is Jessica Crow. I am the founder of Apogee and the host of Change Leader Insights. And I'm so excited because I have here with me Kerry Siggins. Kerry is the CEO of StoneAge, which is an employee-owned company. It's based in Durango. It's a manufacturer of tools and equipment for the industrial cleaning industry, as well as its subsidiary, Breadware, which is an Internet of Things product development company. She's a highly sought after speaker. She's the author of The Ownership Mindset, a handbook for transforming your life and your leadership. She's a blogger. She contributes to several publications, and she's the host of the Reflect Forward podcast, which I listen to all of the time. I'm so excited. Kerry, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to learn from you and share your story and your philosophies around the ownership mindset with people who are all watching. Before we jump into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your origin story, kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure, sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here as well. So I actually grew up in Colorado. So, I know you're in Denver. I'm down here in
Yep.
Durango. I grew up in this small town called Montrose. So I'm a
Yeah.
Colorado native, Colorado girl. I love this state. And my background is in engineering and business. And I love running this company. It's such a really great, cool company. It just fits my personality. It's basically my company now that we're employee owned and the
Yeah.
founders out. But yeah, I grew up in a small town, and I never imagined that I would be back living in a rural town on the western slope of Colorado. But
Right.
here I am, and getting to do all these really amazing things in the industrial cleaning space. We keep the supply chain running. We make sure our
Very
customers go
cool.
home safely every night. And our goal as a organization is to create 1,000 millionaires. So
I
through
love
employee
that.
ownership. So we've got big plans, big vision to
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit now. You kind of mentioned the ownership mindset and your goal and your plans for your own people. What was your motivation for writing the ownership mindset? And I'm going to assume it's all of your experiences and kind of what led you to where you are today, but would love to hear in your words, like, how did you go from doing all the things to sharing all the things in this awesome book that I've been reading?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I wanted to. StoneAge is such a great company, and to be quite honest, I wouldn't be alive. I don't think if I wouldn't have found my way here.
Yeah.
I developed substance abuse issues in my 20s, and I accidentally overdosed on Labor Day of 2006. And I share
Oh,
this story in
wow.
the book. And it was all because I wasn't owning it, even though I didn't understand the ownership mindset back then. And
Hmm.
the ownership mindset is taking responsibility for everything that happens in your life. It's saying things don't happen to me, they happen because of me. And it's
Yeah.
really the most powerful, empowering mindset one can have. And I did not have it.
Hmm.
But I knew that I needed to change my life, and I knew that I needed to that blaming other people for my situation was not getting me where I wanted to be. And so I decided that I was going to change my life, and I was going to take responsibility for every single thing that happened, that for this, every single decision I made to get myself into the situation I was in. And so that was the start of the journey. And then when I came to StoneAge, it was an employee owned company. We were not an ESOP then, which is a more formal structure than what we had with the original founders.
Hmm.
And I started to see how that played out in the business landscape, not just in my own personal life. What happens if you say, I'm responsible for my career, I'm responsible for my effort, I'm responsible for understanding, for admitting my
Hmm.
mistakes, for my effort. And I saw how it transformed not only me, but everyone in the company. And I was really young when they hired me. I was 28. I had no idea what I was doing. They gave me like a 50-50 shot of making it.
Hmm.
And and so and what they did was teach me how to think and act like an owner. Is
Yeah.
they trusted me to make decisions, and gave me decision making authority, and all of these different things that I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is what it feels like to actually be empowered at work.
Yeah.
And I was so young, I had no idea. I was learning and drinking from the fire hose, and I made, so many mistakes, and got lucky a lot. And so during the pandemic, I said, that's it. I knew I always wanted to write a book. So I said, that's it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to share this story of how I came from rock bottom to
Yeah.
building this really truly remarkable company that's not only changing our the industry and the customers we serve, but really the lives of our employees.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's a ripple effect of if you're living and breathing and embodying this ownership
Yes.
mindset, you're essentially giving your team permission to do that too. And I can imagine it's equipping your leaders in the organization, and everyone is a leader, right? But and has to take
Mhm.
responsibility for their outcomes. But how have you seen, like, what are some examples of how you've seen the ownership mindset transform the people and the way that they lead and interact at StoneAge?
Sure. So it just I'll give you two examples. A recent one is that uh, a couple of years ago, as I was really developing my executive management team, and I was seeing that there was a lot of passion for their individual areas that they were
Mhm.
running, and and they always wanted to protect their team. And it was like, oh, if I can get, I need to keep my budget. I don't want to give any of
Right.
it up because, that's how I get the extra headcount or the extra investment to be able to do what I want to do. And I was seeing how that was holding the company back. And so I said to my executive management team, we wrote out, I said, we're going to write out our operating principles. And the first one is that you are executives of this company first. You're
Mhm.
not your department heads. If you want to be
Mm.
a department head and that's it, then you can go into a management role. But as an executive in a company of the company, your responsibility is to the company first.
Yeah.
And you got to think like that. Right? That's me. I'm the CEO. I can't just say, oh, well, sales is more important or engineering is more important or ops is more important. No, I have to keep that holistic picture. And I expect all of you to do that too. And it
Yeah.
really changed the way that my leadership team was thinking about how they showed up and how they interacted. And the next thing you know, it was like, you know what, that headcount really should go to sales. That's going to drive new
Yeah.
revenue growth. So you know what, I'm going to give you some of that. And so we started having this much more collaborative, like outward mindset,
Yeah.
and it worked so well that one of my VP of operations said, I'm starting to do this with my team. And so now it's having this trickle down effect without some like big initiative or, we're going
Yeah.
to train everybody this way. It's like, how are you thinking about the company first? We're all owners here. And
Yeah.
yes, you have your job to do, but now we have people who are now managers, mid-level managers who are doing the same thing. I was like, really, like, could you use this resource? I could give this up because that's going to really help the company or help the customer or drive an initiative forward. So you're seeing like this less territorial
Right.
aspect of the company where people are really thinking more holistically. So
That is such a powerful example because I've seen the opposite side of what you were able to overcome in
yeah,
so many organizations that I've
yeah,
worked in and worked for. That is incredible. I mean,
yeah,
just to be able to, the phrase that I often heard when I was climbing the corporate ladder was, there's less greener pastures at the top, right? Such a giant scarcity mindset, and
yeah,
you want to keep your resources. So for you to be able to empower your team with that mindset
yeah,
and see that kind of manifest in throughout your organization is incredible.
yeah,
And it got me thinking too, in the context of change, you're trying to get things done, you have to change and innovate. And if you have that philosophy and approach of how can we do what's right for the company,
yeah.
I would imagine that's helped you and the organization accelerate any of the initiatives that you have wanted to implement. Is that a fair assessment? Or
Absolutely. And,
yeah.
and especially today, limited resources, everybody's trying to do more with less. We actually just revamped our strategic plan that we did at the beginning of this year and said, you know what, we're not focused enough. There are
Yeah.
two really key initiatives. And I'm a big believer in ambiguity and thinking, like being ambidextrous, right? And being
Right.
able to hold two different truths and deal with ambiguity
Yeah.
in the unknown of what's going to happen. So how do we become more ambidextrous leaders and be able to move and adjust as the world is rapidly changing with technology and geopolitical instability
Mm-hmm.
and just the constant change that we are experiencing as humans now. And so we've revamped our strategic plan with these two specific areas. Exploit the core, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have historically made this type of product, and the best way to keep our market share is to drive cost out. but we have
Mm-hmm.
these new markets that we're exploring, this new technology, and we're transforming from manufacturing into technology. And we can't shove that into the old way of doing business that's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we really keep this idea of exploring? And then we look at like headcount, for example, because we always need people to be able to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at these two initiatives and we said, if nothing else matters, how would we use our headcount that we have open that we're either trying to hire for right now or that we have on hold or that is in the budget for later this year to drive these two things forward. And we had this great brainstorming session and we started changing what we would do. And we said, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
forego that so that we can really focus on these things. And it just creates new positions and new opportunities as you kind of hone that in. And
Wow.
so it's allowing us to really invest in that innovation, but not
Mm-hmm.
forget that we still have this core, even though we don't think this is the future. You can't just let it go.
Right.
And so how do you do that maintaining? So, all of that's innovative thinking. Like you have innovation over here and you have this
Yeah.
that you're holding stable, but I'm still trying to get people to think with, using an innovative mindset about how do we do this and how do we
Yeah.
look at these businesses as two different things and not try to make them work, make the new stuff work in the old model.
Yeah. What I really like about your approach too, it sounds like you're co-creating this vision, this path forward with your team versus having, the leaders come together, like figure out their plans and come to you and say, here's what we're going to do within our departments, right? Like that is a very classic model too, but you're kind of like, no, we're going to approach this together as one
Yeah.
team, what's best for the company. That's really cool.
Vision. It's a
Yeah.
vision. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you have to do. We have a very clear vision for each of our brands, but StoneAge Tools, which is our main brand, the water, making the water jetting equipment for industrial cleaning. Our vision is to have working, which means it's being used, not,
Yeah.
something that people buy and then put off to the side, because that
Right.
happens in these plants. Working industrial cleaning robotics in every major heavy industrial manufacturing facility around the world by 2040.
Wow.
This is a big endeavor. And each of those words matter in that vision: global, heavy industry,
Yeah.
working, robotics, working. And there's a whole set of activity that has to make that happen on a global level. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
developing the product and the sales organization, but the whole support system that goes with this new type of technology that we're introducing. And so that vision is the guiding light. And so all of our plans have to lead up to that. And so
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can, have a very effective strategy if you are just telling people, okay, go come up with your plans and present them to me. To me, it has
Right.
to be this collaborative effort, talking about the trade-offs, talking about focus. What's going to move the needle the most? What are we foregoing, and what does that trade-off look like? You have to
Mm-hmm.
do that collaboratively as a team. Otherwise, it's not one team and you're not going to have a very effective strategy.
No, and that really resonates. I mean, the vision is so critical, but what you're also doing is you're creating buy-in with
Yes.
these key stakeholders who are going to have to do things differently within their teams in order for this vision to be achieved. And I think
Yes.
that is, as somebody who consults in change management, for example, that piece is often missing from the conversation. It's like, we have a vision for this, and we have a vision for this, and we have a vision for this, and somehow it all ties together, but everybody's still trying to do the things that they need to do because they've got directives or objectives or whatever it might be. So I really love how you're bringing that all together and getting alignment from the very beginning, which is
Yeah.
pretty powerful. How do you, so maybe a tactical question here, but how do you start to cultivate that ownership, that innovative, creative mindset? What are some things that I could do practically today to start to build that muscle, that way of thinking?
So as a leader, it all starts with trust. The
Yeah.
foundation is trust. And I learned that when the president of the company, John Wolgamott, who was my boss for those first couple of years, he trusted me to make decisions. And
Mm,
he gave me guidance and we talked about things, but I don't agree with that decision, but you know what? I'm going to let you try it because I trust that you're going to get
I
it
love
done.
that.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't, this is a really big decision. I trust what you're going to do. You have to let an employee who's been here for 20 years go. I believe you. I
Yeah.
trust you. And
Yeah.
all of those things create a lot of fear for somebody who's new, right?
Yeah.
I have to let somebody go. I have to make this big decision. I have to change a process, a way of something that we've been doing this way for a long time, but it's not working. But he
Mm-hmm.
trusted me. And that is where the ownership mindset starts. And so you are not going to create that type of thinking within your organization if there is not trust. If you do not trust your team to make decisions, to implement their ideas. Now, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you don't have expectations and you don't say, here's the why and the what, and then you go figure out the how. That's how you
Mm-hmm.
start to build it. So I think from a foundational perspective, there has to be that trust, and people have to know that if they screw up, it's going to be okay, because that's how
Yeah.
you learn and that's how you grow and develop people. So that's the number one thing. If you want people to really take ownership for their jobs, you've got to trust them to take ownership for their jobs. And that means
Yeah.
that you can't micromanage, and you can't come down on people when
Swoop in
mistakes
and
are being made.
yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that second piece is pretty big too. What it creates is also that psychological safety where people
Yeah.
feel like they can make mistakes and it's not going to be detrimental to their, future success. So that's a big piece of
Huge.
trust and having that both of those
Yeah.
combined.
You're not going to have ownership thinking within your company if you
No,
don't have
yeah,
trust. So
yeah, that
that's the
is
first
really
place to start.
yeah. What maybe like one or two more, like what are some other ways that we can start to cultivate the ownership mindset?
Sure. I think the next thing piece of it is people development. A
Hmm.
lot of leaders, I think, would, when you ask them what their number one job is, they would probably say, to hit my goals. I
Right.
disagree. I think the number one job of a leader is to build other leaders, and
Hmm.
to build people up. And you're going to have people have an ownership mindset if they know that you as their leader and the company is invested in their growth and development. So everybody needs to have a CDP. You need to meet with I do weekly tags with each one of my direct reports. And we're talking not just about the tactical or strategic things that we're working on, but we're talking about their development. How are they
Hmm.
handling this situation? How am I helping them grow and develop as leaders? What is their vision for themselves? And having those conversations and investing people. When people know that you're invested in them, they're going to invest in you. And this is so
Yeah.
important too for this incoming generation. I mean, everybody wants that, but
Yeah.
particularly, these younger millennials and Gen Zers, they want to know that the company that they care about them. So I
Yeah.
think having a really strong people development plan is another thing. And any leader can do that, right? Any leader can build trust. Any leader can build out development plans, even if that's
Hmm.
not part of their corporate culture. So
Yeah. It's
I
so
think
true.
yeah. And then the third one that I would do is a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Uh, People need meaningful, real feedback that's given in a direct yet kind way.
Yeah.
And leaders need to be able to solicit feedback. And so that's why it's the feedback loop.
Hmm.
You've got to be able to talk through problems. You've got to be able to talk through performance issues. And feedback is also positive. You've got to be able to recognize and reward when
Yeah.
great things happen. And so building a culture of feedback where people know that they can trust that they know where they stand in the organization, and that their leader is going to give them feedback, but also solicit their feedback. And again, it doesn't have to be part of the corporate culture. You can do
Yeah.
that as a leader. So any of these
Yeah.
ideas that I share, a lot of people are like, oh, that's not our culture. But just because it's not part of your culture doesn't mean that
Right.
that's not how you can lead your team. So
Yeah. Oh, that's really powerful. What about, so these are great advice tips that leaders can implement to develop their team, create that feedback loop. What about, so kind of shifting towards the conversation around, there's a lot of stuff happening, you're developing your team, you're starting to feel a little bit of overwhelm with everything you have on yourself. There was a podcast actually that you did recently that was related to what do you do when you're going through a lot of change and transformation and you're kind of pouring into your team? How do you care for yourself during all of that? Because that's another big part of being an effective leader.
self-care is a huge part of the ownership mindset. If you're not taking care of yourself, it's really hard to take care of other people. And so I think that you have to understand yourself. Like me personally, I have the capacity to handle so much, but
Mhm.
everybody is different and when their breaking point is, and you need to understand what that looks like for yourself and know
Right.
when you need to take a break. So, what you were talking about, there was all kinds of organizational change that was going on and and I actually I like plowed through it, and I operate like really well in under pressure in crisis
Yeah.
situations. That's when I'm like, like, oh
Dialed
yeah,
in.
bring it on. Like I'm at my
Yeah.
best. But I was sat on a plane. It was on a Saturday morning. I was flying to Florida to do a keynote speech, and I put in my headphones and I was listening to Taylor Swift's new album. And I'm not a Swiftie, but I have mad respect for the woman. I went to her
Oh
concert
my gosh.
Eras tour and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
god, blown away.
Yeah.
So I was listening, and it's so emotional and sad. Like I start crying on the plane, and I was like, you know what? Okay, like I'm at my point that I actually need to decompress for a minute.
Hmm.
And but I'm also the leader. I can't just like tap out, right?
Right.
So, what is it that I need right now to be able to get myself into a better place? And so I wrote that down. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be on Sunday. I've got to give my keynote on Sunday morning, and the
Hmm.
whole rest of the day, I'm just going to take for myself, and I'm
Yep.
not going to do any work, and I'm not going to think about any of these problems, and I'm not going to talk to anybody, and I'm just
Hmm.
going to do things that make me happy. So I did yoga. I got a massage. I laid at the
Hmm.
pool since I was in Florida. And I just gave myself those few hours, and I let myself cry.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I just had this huge emotional relief, and I was like, sucks, and this is really hard. And I did
Yeah.
that little bit of a pity party. And then when I woke up Monday morning, I was like, okay, these are the
Back at
three
it.
things that I need to do this week. Nothing else matters as long as I do these three things, and I'm going to do these
Yeah.
three things well. And that's what I focused on. And so it gave my mind, like it gave my mind the ability to really hone in on those important things. And I gave
Hmm.
myself permission to let the rest fall away, because
Yeah.
I can't just be like, well, I'm taking the week off, even though, we're going through this
Right.
big change as a company. So that's what I do. So I think you need to know yourself, and then you just need to give yourself some time, whether that's take an afternoon off, take a day off, take a couple of days off, go out for a hike. You need to know yourself and what you need to do to decompress, because you can't tap out as a leader. But if
Yep.
I just would have plowed through that and not acknowledged how I was feeling and not let myself have that emotional response
Hmm.
and just give myself a day to kind of feel like crap, then all I would have done is prolonged it, and I would have built up the pressure, and it would have been much uglier. And,
Right.
you know,
Well, and it probably would have affected your ability to think
yeah,
strategically and make good
yeah,
decisions and all of those
mhm,
things.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I do the same. I try to incorporate, like if I'm feeling a certain way, be mindful of why am I having this emotional
yeah,
response or
yeah,
feeling, and honor that and lean into the areas that make me feel good and relax. So I love that that's a template that you use. How can leaders take that template of self-care and apply it to teams at scale? I think that's where, in a lot of CEOs and senior leaders, and you're very, the way that you approach this is very progressive. So kudos to you. I think there's a challenge of how do we take responsibility or have accountability for the self-care of our workers. And, you know, I think that's a difficult
yeah.
conversation to apply that inside an organization. How would you approach that?
So first, I think that leaders aren't accountable and responsible for their employees' self-care. I think that's a very personal thing,
Mm-hmm.
and people need to take care of themselves. But here's what leaders can do to help make that part of their team culture or company culture.
Mm-hmm.
One, they have to role model it. I'm taking
Yep.
a break. I'm not working on a Saturday. Never, even if you are working, like I get up super early in the morning, and I
Mm-hmm.
go to bed really early. I use, now that you have like schedule send for emails, I never send emails before 8 o'clock in the morning. If I'm
Yeah.
typing them, then I just do scheduled send. Like I want to
Yeah.
role model what healthy leadership looks like. And if I make the choice
Yeah.
because I like to get up early, that's fine. But I don't want anyone else to feel like they too have to,
Be
live by
ready
my
and
schedule, right? That's just my
mm-hmm.
own personal choice and how I like to work. So I think you've got to, one, role model it. I get a
Mm-hmm.
massage every week and everyone knows it. Hey, on Friday
Mm-hmm.
mornings, I go in at 7:30 to 9, I get a massage. I'll be in the office after that. So
Yep.
allowing people to have the flexibility to do their self-care and role model
Mm-hmm.
is really important. But the easiest thing that you can do, and I mean, I say the easiest, I would say the most impactful thing that you can do. It's not necessarily easy depending on how many direct reports you have,
Hmm.
but it's to talk about it.
Yeah, right.
And you
Make
just, so
space
you
for
role
it.
model it, you give space for people to have that, but talk about it. Like people are more likely to take care of themselves when their at work, if their manager is saying, "Hey, I care about you. You know, are you okay? Do you
Hmm.
need a personal day? Let's go for a walk. Can I buy you a massage?
Yeah.
What can I do to help you right now?" So often that's sometimes all somebody needs to do is just talk through it.
Yeah.
And then you can help them make a commitment. Okay, so you're really stressed right now. You know, every day, what's one thing that you can do? And I can be your accountability buddy. Okay, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes a day. You know, okay, great. I'm going to check in on you and just make sure that you're doing that breath work to ground yourself, or I'll take a walk with you, or whatever that looks like. But having that dialogue, that's what you need to do. You can't take it on for people. All you can do is
Yeah.
role model
Yep.
and encourage. But it's really hard to encourage if you're not having those conversations. Are you taking care of
Yeah.
yourself? Do you
Yeah.
need something right now? Like one of my employees, his whole family is sick, and so uh mouth, foot, and hand is
Oh
going
gosh.
is
Yeah.
going around Durango right
Yeah.
now, and COVID is
Oh.
everywhere. And so
Oh.
I was like, "Hey, can I make dinner for you and your family?" And he said, "You're so busy, KP. You can't do that." I said, "Oh gosh, I'm just going to whip up some chicken noodle soup for you, and I'm going to go buy a loaf of bread, really good bread from one of the bakeries here." And I brought it to them. And
Yeah.
it's just those little things, like, oh my gosh, to not have to make a meal when everybody in the house is sick. That really, like, how freaking easy is
Easy as
that?
that
You
too.
know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is saying, I care about you. Take care of yourself. You
Hmm.
know, don't worry about dinner tonight. I've got you. And so, you gotta come from it, from that place, and have those dialogues and make it safe for people to speak up, ask how people are doing, and then help. But remember, help isn't actually help unless it's wanted, right? So it's
Right.
always important to say, like, would this be helpful if I did this
Yeah.
for you? Right? You don't want to intrude or impose or do something that makes people feel uncomfortable. So would it be helpful if I did this for you? Like, I would love to make you guys dinner, and so you don't have to worry about it tonight. So anyway, those are my suggestions. Role model, encourage, and have the conversations. And then when you can take action to be helpful when someone's
Yeah.
going through a tough time, do it.
I love that. And really what, a piece that stood out to me too, that is just that caring, like caring
Gotta
about
care.
people as people. And you didn't even have to say that explicitly, but that really came through in what you were describing. And I think we need more of that in our organizations. And maybe this ownership mindset is the key to unlocking that caring and innovation. So
Yes.
wow, so many knowledge bombs just dropped on this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to share or impart on people who are listening, who are leaders, executives in organizations? They want to make a culture change. They're seeing this opportunity, how they can leverage the ownership
Yeah.
mindset to really, with themselves and with their teams, to start that transformation.
Yeah. So in the book, it's really is a handbook. So you
Mhm.
can go through the chapters and you can
I
pick,
love
like,
it.
this is
Yeah.
what we're struggling with the most, and use that as because I give tips and I give stories about, how I did it or failed at doing it, and
Hmm.
give actionable takeaways. So the book really has all kinds of ideas, but here's my recommendation is start with one thing. I think that
Yeah.
culture change, it gets overwhelming because you're like, oh, we have so much that we have to change. And that might be true, but you're never going to be effective, excuse me, effective if you take it all on at the same time. So pick what you think is going to be the biggest impact. If you're not sure, send a survey out to your employees. We're going to do an anonymous survey, and we're going to ask you what you think the biggest challenges with our culture right here. Let them tell you, and then put a plan together to go tackle one thing. And
Right.
then when you get through that
Okay.
one thing, then survey people again, and then go hit the next thing. And
Yep.
then that way you are just chunking, like just putting it into bite-sized chunks and hitting one thing at a time and not overwhelming the organization with some huge, transformation that has to happen all
Right.
at the same time. So
Right. Oh, that's really great advice. Thank you, Kerry. This has been fantastic talking with you. How can people who are interested in either buying your products or booking you for speaking engagement, how can they get in touch with you?
yeah, my website, everything is there, the book, my podcast, and my calendar to book a time to meet with me. So kerrysiggins.com, KerrySiggins.com. Everything that you need to know is there. And I'm really active on LinkedIn. So you can also
Perfect.
connect with me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Kerry, thank you again for your time today. Have a great rest of your day. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.